We turn now to another international story. On Tuesday, the president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, said his re-election is a mandate by the people and vowed to continue his, quote, black empowerment program. This promise has frightened the fewer than 50,000 white Zimbabweans who are the ethnic minority in the nation of nearly 13 million people. In a speech Tuesday, Mugabe told the throngs of supporters his empowerment plan is, quote, the final phase of total independence, end quote. Under the indigenization policy, all companies would cede control to blacks. Mining and banking companies are among the principal commercial targets, and a new currency, the Zimbabwe dollar, would be eventually reintroduced. John Campbell served as U.S. ambassador to Nigeria and is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations who studies policy in Africa. John, thank you so much for being here with us. I guess my first question is this indigenization, and Robert Mugabe is clearly very serious about this, but is this realistic or is this a political ploy in some ways?
I think it's probably both. In year 2000, about 4,000 whites owned more than half of the commercial farmland in Zimbabwe. Mugabe seized it, distributed a good bit of it to his cronies, but he also distributed a great deal of it to landless peasants. That built up significantly his political base, and it in part accounts for why he did so well in the last elections. So politically, this is a move that will probably be popular with the Zimbabwean people. Economically, at best, it will be neutral. At worst, it will be a disaster.
Well, some have said that his efforts to give these farms back to black Zimbabweans was a failure, and that it was a big part of the economic collapse of the economy in the first 10 years or so of the 21st century. Would we have any indication that this, moving on to the banks and the other sectors in business would be any different?
Agriculture during that first decade was a very large part of the economy. Commercial farming, mostly the raising of tobacco, was where Zimbabwe's foreign exchange came from. When that industry was destroyed, the Zimbabwean dollar collapsed and you ended up with a hyperinflation. What we're talking about now is a smaller part of the economy, albeit still an important part. And of course, there are all kinds of interesting combinations and permutations here. The diamond mines, for example, they are operated in conjunction with Chinese, who are allied to Mugabe. Is Mugabe going to seize the Chinese interests in the diamond mines? I doubt it.
Well, it's as if you're reading my notes, because that was my next question, is how might this affect the business that the Chinese has been committed to doing in the country?
Well, that is where there are a lot of gray areas. Already in the rhetoric, there is a distinction being made between mines on the one hand and banks, insurance companies, manufacturing on the other. Certain radical members of Mugabe's government have said that extractive industries would be taken without compensation. Insurance companies, banks, and manufacturing are not extractive industries. Further, the basic legislation here was passed 2007-2008, in other words, some time ago. So there's lots and lots of room here for maneuver. And I think it's premature to say what exactly the consequences will be. That said, in the short term, obviously, few foreigners are going to be interested in putting money in Zimbabwe now.
And it does seem very perplexing. Can you sort of, and this requires speculation, I freely admit that, but how this policy might have a long-term effect on this country?
If it's carried out in the terms that the radicals have been talking about, the country will be condemned to more or less perpetual impoverishment and very high levels of immigration. People who can will leave. They will mostly go to South Africa and to Botswana. essentially Zimbabwe will recede from the international consciousness. And for most of the Zimbabwean people, life will continue to be one of grinding poverty.
And I wonder if Mugabe will be receptive or sensitive to any of those indicators. I mean, the government, the country was actually doing fairly well under the coalition government that, of course, just got elected out. If he sees these signs of doom that you've just prophesied, I wonder if that will be enough for him to change his direction.
Robert Mugabe is 89 years of age. He goes monthly to Singapore for medical treatment. It is commonly said on the street that he suffers from cancer. The question becomes, how long will Robert Mugabe remain in this earthly life? Further, if in fact you are devoted to black empowerment, as Robert Mugabe is, and if you define it in a narrow way, the way he does, then your ideals may trump the practicalities.
Very, very interesting. John Campbell, I want to thank you for your perspective
Thank you.
and information on this. Thank you.
Thank you.